Hey guys, it's Amber with NotableInk.com, and I have 12 direct ink to paper backgrounds for you, along with 6 cards that I've made to celebrate Altenew's December 2019 ink release. We have 3 brand new ink families that I'm going to share today. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do that down below. And if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button, which really helps me out. So let's get right into it. To start off with, we have Fall Harvest color family, and this has some beautiful golden yellows. We've got Butternut, Pumpkin Pie, which is obviously perfect for the holidays, Yellow Ochre, and also Sicilian Amber. So I have recently really gotten into some muted tones, so these could not have come at a more perfect time. Next up, we have Sugar Plums. We're starting off with Pale Mauve. We have Amethyst, Grape Agate, and also Plum. And these colors are just gorgeous. Next up, we have Tranquility, which is another beautiful blue color family. Again, it's a kind of muted family. I'm just going to shuffle these around because I don't have them organized properly. Starting off with the lightest color, Misty Morning. Then we have Cloudy Sky. We have Nimbus. And then we also have Dark Night. So another just totally gorgeous color family. So you can see that Altenew has updated their color card. These color cards come with the ink, the oval inks, and I keep all of mine. So you can see this is the original design here, and I'm just going to shuffle them through so you can kind of see where these new colors fit in with what we have so far. Now I don't have all of the oval inks, but I do have a pretty good selection here. I am kind of working up my collection, but I keep those on my desk so I can shuffle through and pick out my color families. So we're going to get right into the backgrounds, and I have Butternut here, which is the lightest yellow color, and I'm just very lightly swiping this over an A2 size piece of Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock. And sometimes I'm using just the edge, sometimes I'm tilting it just a bit to get more of the ink pad surface onto the cardstock. So I'm creating a bit of a wavy pattern, which I thought would be a great backdrop for a card. Adds a little bit of texture, but it's not completely overwhelming to the background because we've done it in a light color there. So you can see the one on the left is the one I just did on the screen. On right, I have a little less ink on the paper. Moving on to Misty Morning, we're going to do a similar technique. This time though, we're just going to add kind of like some wavy, again, wavy, but this is just going to be horizontal across the page. So super lightly, and I'm just going to fill in any areas that maybe look a little too bare. This is the lightest color of the Tranquility set, and this I thought would be perfect to mimic a wintry wind or snowy background, that kind of thing. So I'm going to actually create a card with this one on screen and with the one that we just did before. So you can see 2 different versions of that here. Of course, you don't have to use these as A2 size. You can cut these down as well. Moving on to Pale Mauve, we're going to use the Sugar Plum Fairy. Oh, no, not Sugar Plum Fairy. That's what I always think of. We're going to use the Sugar Plums ink family, and we're going to create a gradient background. So starting off with the lightest color, Pale Mauve, then we're going to move on to Amethyst, and I'm just going to swipe it across several times. I kind of like it when there's some sketchy like stripes of it up above on the lighter color. So I'm not really working too hard to make this smooth per se. I'm also not necessarily going for a completely covered surface either. If there's some white areas of the cardstock showing through, I'm totally okay with that. I want it to look like a handmade background. This one, as the ink dries, it actually gets smoother and smoother as the ink dries. Now, because I have so much ink on the paper, you will see that the cardstock will start to curl up, but once the ink is dry, you'll see that the paper flattens back out. If it doesn't for you, then just slide it in between a piece of paper, like a folded piece of paper, and run it through your die cut machine, or stick it underneath a heavy book and it will flatten out for you. Of course, once you attach it to your card base, it'll flatten up as well. So I'm just adding a little bit more color to this, And I didn't bother to clean my surface in between colors, but if you're worried about cross-contamination, you can totally do that. And you can see off screen, that's one that is a little bit drier, but I did some lighter inking on that one. Moving on to the next one, we're going to grab pale mauve again, and this time we're going to create almost like a gauzy or linen background, but I wanted to have just a little bit more depth of color along the edges of the cardstock to kind of create a little bit of a border. So I'm holding my stamp pad at maybe, I don't know, 30 degrees or something like that to the paper, and lightly swiping it across the surface. So I wanted to have two colors with this one, so I'm moving on to Misty Morning, and I'm going to go through the same technique. And I'm kind of putting a little more pressure on the edges and then lifting up and just ever so slightly touching the paper as I continue that stroke. And I did tape this one with some temporary adhesive to my glass mat just so that it would stay in place. You can see I have a darker version and a lighter version here. I will create a card with that lighter version on screen today. Moving on to our fall harvest set, I'm just going to swipe this across the page with a little bit more pressure this time. And you can see that it's creating a darker color on the cardstock. I am cleaning my mat in between this because I don't want the color families to mix on my stamp pad. I'm not so concerned about that with a gradient of the same family, but with different families, I do want to clean my surface. I also don't want to pick up that ink and kind of contaminate my cardstock either. So this time we're going to do a similar technique, except for we're going to go darker, and this is more of a vertical pattern here. I'm going to put a lot more ink at the top and less so at the bottom. So we use yellow ochre. Here I have Nimbus. So we're going to use some of the darker ones. So far we've used the lightest colors, with the exception of the gradient one. But here we're moving into more of the midtones. And here we have grape agate. So this is the third darkest color in each one of these families. So I'm making sure to overlap the ink colors just a bit. You can see we got a little bit of like a forest green in between the ochre and the Nimbus, and then more of a violet in between the blue and the purple agate. So I'll make a card with that one, not on screen. I will actually die cut that with the Wavy Outlines die, and I'll show you that card at the end. Here we have Amethyst, and we're just doing some stripes again, so similar pattern as to the Fall Harvest one, except for we're just using one color and we're doing some vertical lines. With the blue one, you can see that I went a little more heavy-handed on one side of the cardstock. Now, here I have Pink Pearl, which is totally not associated with this release at all, except for it creeped into my photos at the beginning, so I thought I would go ahead and show this. I actually created this for a completely different blog hop, so you might see this again, or I may just eliminate it from that blog hop completely since I've already shown it here. But here I'm making sure that I am pressing down on the edges and then lifting up. I'm just doing a diagonal pattern. This is going to have sort of that linen gauzy appearance as well, except for it's going to be diagonal, and we'll have a nice border all the way around. So here I'm just making sure you're paying attention. Pink Pearl is one of my favorite colors, so you get a little added bonus one in here. And that is that one. Moving on, we have Misty Morning again, and we're doing some up and down stripes here. But this time we're just going to do just a border. And I did end up using this in another hop. So you will see this background reappear again. But I think this is a great technique just to add a light border to one side of your cardstock. So let's do a run through. So we have a really dark one. I did do a lighter one of that with the lightest colors in the families. Here's the Pink Pearl with the diagonal linen type background. This one I used the same technique, but instead of diagonal, I went straight across, and that was with Butternut. Here we have a gradient just going straight across with the whole Fall Harvest. This is the first one we did with the wavy pattern. We've got all three color families there. This one I really like. This is that kind of linen appearance, and we're going to use this lighter version here in a card today. We've got some purple stripes. We'll use this in one of the cards, but not on film. And then this one, I'll show you how I make the card with this little wintry background. Definitely using, this is one of my favorite backgrounds that we made. And then I really like this one as well. So it took about 12 minutes to make all of those backgrounds. So this is something that goes really quickly if you need a background. And let's get into the card making. So I'm going to start off with the Winter Wishes stamp set. This has a lovely little scene on it that I thought would be perfect for this wintry wind background. So I'm going to stamp this in the Obsidian Black Pigment Ink, and I'm going to heat emboss it with the Iridescent Pearl embossing powder. I wanted to add a little sparkle to the sky, to the snow, and we're also going to do some splatter on here as well. So in addition to heat embossing the little house scene there, I'm going to do the sentiment the same way. I'll stamp it with the same ink, emboss it with the Iridescent Pearl. After I have everything embossed, I'll go ahead and die cut this down to a smaller size and pop it up on some sticky back fun foam. Then we're going to do some splatter with some Altenew Pure White ink spray. I also used the Iridescent ink spray as well. Here's the finished card, and you can see I added some Nouveau Drop embellishments in a couple different colors. As always, I'll have all supplies listed down below. Moving on to the next card, we're going to use the Plentiful Pine Layering Stamp Set to create some Christmas trees. So there are 4 layers to these Christmas trees. I'm only going to use the last 3 layers. I'm going to omit the solid layer. So I'm stamping layer 2 with Stazon Piano Black ink. Layer 3 is going to be with Stazon Pigment Snowflake ink. And then for layer 4, I'm going to come back in with the black ink. So the idea was having that white ink in the center obviously is going to look like snow, which is something I definitely want. But then also it's going to allow me to come back in with that black ink and add greater detail and dimension, because the white layer just kind of washed everything out. The reason I'm using Stazon ink is because I'm stamping on Glamma Iridescent vellum, and I find I get a much better result on vellum and more non-porous surfaces when I use the Stazon pigment ink. The other reason I like the pigment ink is because it dries super fast. So I've cut a piece of that same vellum from the Honeybee Stamps Deckled Edge Circle Stacking dies, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment from the Plentiful Pine. If you haven't seen this stamp set has probably the best holiday sentiments I've seen. I love the style of the script with the sans serif font. Just the combination, that particular script font is just so pretty. So the sentiments alone in this stamp set are worth it to get them. So I've added some foam squares on the back of the center pine tree. I've directly adhered the others straight to that piece of vellum, and then I popped up the vellum with some foam tape. I'm adding some pure white ink spray, splatter, and this card will be done. Here's the finished card, and I love how this card turned out. I hope you do as well. Moving on to the last card, I have that kind of linen, gauzy type of background that we created, and I have the lighter version that we made. This is the Birch Impressions layering stamp set, and it has 2 different birch tree trunks in here. One of them's a little thicker, the other one a little thinner. I'm going to put one of each of them on the sides, the very sides of the cardstock. Then I'm going to stamp one kind of a little bit closer to the middle, but I'm also going to draw in a couple in the background. So these are going to be the largest trees, so they're all the way in the forefront. And then I'm going to use my warm gray and toner gray markers to create the ones in the background. So the colors are a little bit different. So I stamped in the Rock Collection color family, and then you can see I have actually the Rock Collection markers, but I also used a combination of the warm gray as well. The reason I use warm gray is because that lightest marker is lighter than the Rock Collection markers. And so I just kind of mimicked what was going on with the stamps, added different layers of color here, kind of made it messy. They're really easy to draw. And I've stamped the Happy Winter Birthday sentiment, which is from the Birch Impression stamp set. I've done that on just a piece of craft cardstock. I'm going to punch 2 small holes in each side because I decided I wanted to attach this with some black twine. I thought that that would be a nice look, almost kind of like it's a banner that's strung between the 2 trees in the forefront. So I just marked the holes there, and I'm just kind of punching my needle through, and then I'll go ahead and thread this black twine. This is just black natural twine, and I'm going to put that through the other side, and then we'll tie it off at the back. Sorry, I'm out of screen there. I always pull anything that I'm sewing close to me because I don't want to poke myself. So I just tied them right there, and then I'm just going to add a piece of tape just to keep those threads flat so that it's easier to put on the card front. Stay tuned through the end because I'm going to walk you through the other cards. Here's the finished card with a close-up of the twine tying the sentiment to the card. I also have a piece of foam tape underneath that strip to pop it up. I added white splatter again, and then also used a white gel pen to add some highlights to the trees, and then some sketchy snow lines at the base of the trees. This card uses 2 of the panels that we made, the wavy background made with butternut ink, and then the darkest panel we made with the 3 different ink color families with the vertical stripes up and down. I die cut that with Wavy Outlines die to create these roses, die cut Star Dream metallic gold cardstock with that same die, and then inlaid those pieces, which I think is a really cool effect. The sentiment is from More Than Words stamp set, also by Altenew. I die cut down the pale mauve striped panel that we created with a small stacked die, and I used Poppy Garden. I stamped that onto a piece of just regular vellum with the Stazon ink, and then the sentiment I used is The Best Thing. I also added some black embellishments to finish off that card. For the last card, I used the horizontal butternut background that we made, and I used Antique Rose stamp set. I stamped the roses with the Sugar Plums family and the leaves with the Tranquility family, and then the sentiments are from the Mini Thanks stamp set and sentiment strips. So here's all the cards together. You know, I love it when my cards coordinate in their color family. So I was really happy with this release, and I hope that you guys kind of feel inspired to create your own backgrounds. They're so easy to make and so quick, so you can throw something together really quickly, grab some die cuts from your bowl that you probably have somewhere on your desk holding all those extras, and create some really quick cards. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, hit that like button if you enjoyed this, subscribe, and hit that bell button. Be sure to leave a comment on my blog for a chance to win a giveaway. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'll be back soon with more inspiration. Until next time, breathe, ink, inspire.